DJ PK. PK's enjoying a little vacation. He'll be back Wednesday. Well, we are joined right now by Rocco Miller, Bracketeer.com. Rocco, good morning.
Good morning. How are we doing today?
I'm doing well. Rocco, I got to ask you, because I've always wondered about, people like you and Joe Lenardi and people who build their life around college hoops. What do you do the rest of the year?
Well, I actually work on scheduling for all 31 conferences, more of a consultant for the leagues to try to give teams opportunities that otherwise might not get them, whether it's through different events or just playing each other home and home. A good example last year, we got VCU and New Mexico to play a home-and-home series that I think really helped both teams. Now, unfortunately, I don't think VCU was getting in unless they won the Atlantic 10 tournament yesterday. But, just trying to manufacture those opportunities. The world of, non-power conference basketball has become increasingly, almost impossible to get in that large bid, as we saw yesterday, if you're in that situation. But we try to create as many angles as we can for those teams to prove themselves. There's a lot of talent across all levels of college basketball. And, so it's a great opportunity for me as well to keep up with the portal. Scheduling has a lot to do with what happens in the transfer portal in terms of which teams will play each other, which teams won't play each other. So it's a constant re-education on which players are going where. And then before we know it, it's October and we're getting ready for the season to start.
I love an entrepreneur. I love finding a niche. Good work, Rocco. I'm impressed. And I think on behalf of everyone listening, anything you can do to get Utah, BYU, or Utah State an intriguing home and home, because we see very little of those. Anything you can do, including getting them to play each other, we all welcome. We're all pulling for you, Rocco.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree with where you guys are coming from. And, a lot of teams understand the data doesn't favor them when they come to the altitude, and that really hurts. But if we can get games in Vegas or whatever we got to do, we'll take that over nothing.
Yep.
But I totally understand. You have unbelievably passionate fans in the state of Utah, well-supported programs, that's pretty clear, and an exciting future, I think, for the youth. So, a lot to look forward to, but it is brutal when trying to get a team to agree to come up there nowadays.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, Bracketeer.com, let's keep the main thing as I get distracted, as I often do. The brackets come out. Is there anybody that you saw right away and you thought wildly overseeded, wildly underseeded, or what the heck is North Carolina doing in this tournament?
Yeah, I think the big one for me was actually Texas. Even for me, they were launched into the sun before the SEC tournament started even. I thought they needed 4 wins just to be relevant. Everything that the committee had taught us over the last 5 years since the net was introduced. So it's been 6 years, but we didn't get a bracket in 2020. So we've only seen 5 brackets until yesterday. And one of the general rules of thumb, and I've talked to committee members about this, so this is not something that just makes logical sense, but it checks that box too, is that when you take away the quad 4 results, what's your record? Just what's your record without quad 4? And if it's anything below 500, you should be at extreme risk. That's basically telling the committee you had a bad season, you had a losing season, you had tons of opportunities, you didn't win enough games, and that basically tips the scales, like too much water in the boat. Well, Texas went 12-15. I mean, they shouldn't even have been close to being considered. And I get that they beat SEC teams, and they got a couple of good wins in Nashville, one of those against Texas A&M, who will be a number 4 seed. But throughout the year, and the other element of the Longhorns is the fact that any 15-loss team to ever get in, I think they're only the 5th team to do it of all time. The other 4 examples have extraordinary highlights on their resume. So like that Colin Sexton team from Alabama around 2019, 2018 timeframe, there's a Vanderbilt team in there as well. They both beat multiple 1 seeds. This Texas team did not come close to that, not even sniffing that. Their best win was maybe that Texas A&M win. Their best road win was Mississippi State, which is still a good road win. I'm not knocking that. What I'm saying is it's not extraordinary. They had chances. In the SEC this year, you had 2 1 seeds, 2 2 seeds, you had a 3 seed, you had a 4 seed, you had multiple 6 seeds. They didn't beat any of those teams, not even once, except for A&M at the very end. And so, to me, it was a pretty easy decision to not. They shouldn't even have been in the first 4 out, based on the process that I was that I've studied, that I've been trained on, that committee members have told me from prior years. So Texas to me was absolutely egregious. North Carolina is, of course, getting all the hype for good reason. I just thought when Colorado State took the Mountain West bid, they were the very easy team to dismiss because there was other good options for teams that had wins over the field, whether it was Indiana, even though they had limited wins. They had the big one at Michigan State. They had a Purdue home win. And, they didn't lose anything outside of Quad 1. They won. You can't look at North Carolina and Indiana side by side and not take the Hoosiers, in my view. Also, the West Virginia thing, I'm actually not as upset about because the committee's talked about this before, how they might, whether it's fair or not, but just judging a team based on what they're bringing to the tournament. The DeVries injury happened forever ago, but they didn't play that well without him, and I had a feeling they might leave him out. They were projected in my first four to Dayton. I had a feeling they might slip out. So I wasn't as angry as probably the general public on that one, but with Carolina, based on the fact that Colorado State took that last bid, I just didn't think there was any more room for them, and there was really nobody in the field that I could replace with North Carolina. And it ended up being Indiana, but I think Indiana's got a strong case against North Carolina in this example.
Everybody brings a bias to this, and mine is I grew up in San Diego rooting for the underdog, literally teams that moved away to L.A., so you know how we feel about big markets. And I went to UC Santa Barbara, a Big West school, so I've rooted for the little guy forever. I've never been Yankee, Cowboy, Laker guy. And so I bring that to college sports. And that is my bias, but nonetheless, at the end of the year, when you tell me that North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Texas, these last couple of weeks are really on the bubble and they could miss, and Drake and Boise State and UC Irvine might get in, guess what I would bet on? I mean, I'm not a gambler, but guess what I bet on?
Right.
I bet on the big brands, and all three of them got in. And unless they're all assigned like a letter code, Team A, Team B, Team C, like once you introduce the power of the brand, I mean, I'm sure the committee chair left the room when they talked about North Carolina. They play by the rules. But you're hanging out. You're on a committee with him. You develop some type of relationship, friendship. Do you really want to tell him no when he walks back in a room? No. I always thought it was going to break this way. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. And I was right there with you 2 mornings ago. So the morning they lost to Duke, I had North Carolina in. And I'm kicking myself a little bit. I should not have touched that. I'm just not going from 1-11 to 1-12. You have to look at it again after they play again. It's just, winning 8% of the time against your best part of the schedule. I think the math of that just got to me like, okay, we're going to come to our senses now and realize there's no way we can put this team in. And that was foolish by me. You're 100% right. They've found they had enough things they could point at to keep them in or put them in, whichever order it went in the room there. And you're 100% right about the committee dynamics. I'm on multiple mock committees throughout each season. We just did ours the weekend before, our big one. And it's the same. Like by the end of the weekend, you've spent well over – I mean, these sessions are long, 4, 6, 8 hour sessions. And then you go grab dinner together. You go, to hang out together during breaks, and you kind of just chat teams. Hey, what were you thinking when this team came up? And you're doing that stuff on the side. So there's a whole committee dynamic that, it's either unconscious, subconscious, or conscious that you know what you're doing when it's time to really make that final vote. And it's just it's something you can't really prove. He does have to leave the room, but there's a dynamic to it. That's a conflict of interest. And then obviously seeing that you can get financially compensated additional for bonuses for teams getting in or out. It's a pretty big issue. And I get it. If it's just a business and that's all this is now, and if the NCAA loses whatever it is, hundreds of millions of dollars if North Carolina's not in, then I get it. But just say that.
We're joined right now by Rocco Miller from Bracketeer.com. All right, what people really want to know is their team going to win. BYU got a 6 seed. I'm curious if you think that is the right seed for them, and what odds do they have? You already mentioned VCU. What odds do they have of beating Virginia Commonwealth?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting matchup. I don't mind the seed. I had BYU as my last number 5, but it was really close. They entered the day as the top 6. I did a deeper breakdown and ended up moving them to a 5. Another example where I probably should have just left them where I had them to start yesterday. But at the end of the day, I think it's a fair seed based on there was still a couple of the records that weren't up to 500. I think in quad one, maybe one game under 500. So when you're trying to break into the fives and the fours, there's some really big time resumes you're competing against. But VCU, they've been an electric team, a very veteran team. You guys are familiar with a lot of the guys. They used to play for Utah State. Max Scholga, Odom's staff is very similar to when he was at Utah State. I'm still friends with them over at VCU. So I think it'll be a really good game because VCU likes to get up and down. They find open shooters on the floor. BYU has been so tremendous offensively. I think we could get a wide open game and a lot of points. I think it just comes down to who can get stops down the end. The traditional basketball things, but it's going to play like a fast game. I think it'll be one of the best games, I think, in the first round, barring somebody going cold.
Utah State is a 10 seed, so let's just ask the same questions. Did they get the right seed, and what shot do they have against 7th-seeded UCLA?
Yeah, I think they did, right where I had them. UCLA, yeah, it's interesting. UCLA's been on the road all year, and now they're sending these guys to Lexington. I think that's Utah State's best advantage is that, UCLA just had to go to Indianapolis for their conference tournament. They showed up there. They got killed. And I don't know, maybe that's a good thing for UCLA because they didn't have to stay there very long. They could get back to L.A. after that opening loss to Wisconsin. I think overall, it's a Mick Cronin team, so they're going to rebound really well. They're going to defend really well. And Utah State didn't play their best basketball in the last month. So, and we'll see, hopefully Carson Templin's okay. I saw him shaking up a little bit at the end of the Colorado State loss. But overall, I think if UCLA it comes down to them, really. Obviously, they're superior on a talent point of view. I love Ian Martinez, Mason Falslev, Drake Allen, those guys. But when you're going up against Kobe Johnson's probably the best individual defender maybe in the entire Big Ten. He certainly was in the Pac-12 last year. Then you have talented guys like Sky Clark, Dylan Andrews, the bigs in the middle. It's a tough physical matchup if UCLA is locked in. But you might catch UCLA at the end of an exhausting season where they're on their 6th trip to the East, which is, of course, unprecedented. And maybe they're ready. Maybe they're ready to just kind of move on with the off season. We'll see. That happens more than you think nowadays with the portal, with these super conferences, with coast to coast leagues. So maybe that's the angle for Utah State. But I think if Utah State clicks, they're a good team to watch. They can play together. They have a lot of guys playing for the last time. Seniors. So I think it's interesting, and hopefully for the Aggies' sake, they can hang around and make it a game with 10 minutes to go.
I have a hard time corralling my inner college basketball nerd. Many people know that, including my co-host, who fortunately is on vacation right now because he'd be busting my chops, rightly so, over this. But I've loved college basketball forever, going back to, being in junior high. It just the tournament completely captured my imagination. And given the fact that you schedule teams in the offseason, you seem to have quite a bit of history. So the thing I think about Utah State, UCLA starts with when Stu Morrill is here 20 years ago dominating. That is the first time the Utah State-BYU rivalry broke down, and they didn't play. And some of that was personalities, but some of that was coaches didn't like playing his matchup zone early in the season because they hadn't had time to practice and prepare for it. They didn't want to take the loss. They didn't want to go up there in a hostile environment. And that was, I think, part of the equation. Now you fast forward here, okay, there's 17 coaches in the last 18 years have gone through. It's just nonstop. But guess what? They land on a coach who uses a matchup zone. They dominate early in the year. When they stop dominating, I asked someone who I think is wired into the program, are people catching up with the matchup zone? Because I'm thinking back to the Stu Morrill days. And they're like, no, it's a bad game. So now we have on Scott Girard, the radio voice of the Aggies, who I do think is plugged in. And he went to Utah State. He knows the whole history of the program. And I just asked him a couple segments ago, what about Utah State and UCLA? And he says the advantage talking to people is nobody in the Big Ten plays this matchup zone. UCLA hasn't seen it. CSU saw it. And they won big the second and third time because they adapted to it. Boise won big the second time because they adapted to it. UCLA, you can watch it on film, but it's not the same thing. How big an advantage do you think this matchup zone is, given the stuff I've heard over the last 25 years and what you hear from coaches when you try to schedule games in the summer?
Yeah, it's a great point. I would have to go back and watch some of their non-conference film, but I'm looking at the teams UCLA played, and that's probably true. New Mexico is the only Mountain West team they played. That was early in the year, and they don't mix a lot of zone in, like especially not a matchup zone. So, yeah, I think that's certainly an angle. That's why and I'm like you, since as long as I can remember watching these games, probably when I was little. When I was 7, the Final Four came to Seattle in 1989, and it's been lights, and I remember that. So it's been off to the races since '89 in my life. But yeah, I think that's a good angle. I believe, obviously you want to get away with adjustments are always in order. It's a TV timeout to TV timeout sport, and the best coaches like Jared Kaplan's a heck of a coach. Obviously Cronin is a heck of a coach. Adjustments are always coming throughout a game, and that's one of my favorite parts of why I go to so many games across so many leagues, is because I want to see how these guys adjust and how they strategize, because other coaches aren't as in tune with what's going on out there, and that can separate a team being successful or not. But these two are very strong coaching staffs, so I would imagine UCLA maybe catches them off guard early. Could be a good first half, and then we'll see how the counter punches go from there. It is going to be not only this matchup, but we'll have a lot of matchups like this where it's going to be a chess match for the first 25 minutes or so, and then it's all about who adjusts and who makes the right tweaks to go out and finish the game off.
Rocco, it's been great talking to you. We appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on and talking hoops with people, and thanks in advance for whatever you can do to line up good home games. And everybody here likes going to Vegas. I've seen all 3 of these fan bases travel to Vegas big time, so they can say they don't want to go to Vegas, but they do. They absolutely want to go to Vegas. And some people they won't even deny it. They'll just race you down there. So anything you can do would be awesome.
Oh, that's right. And we have a bunch of new arenas going up there, and there's already a bunch now. So it's a college basketball hotbed. I was there all last week for the tournament, so
wait, how many slowing down. How many arenas are they at, and how many are going up? Count them up for us.
Okay, well, for the conference tournaments, we know we have the Orleans for 2 different leagues.
Right.
We have the Henderson Arena for the Big West.
Right.
We have, of course, Michelob Ultra, which is where the women's NBA team plays. We have MGM Grand Garden Arena, where they're going to play this new tournament called the Crown Tournament. You have, of course, T-Mobile, the big one. Right. That's for the the most expensive one to rent. Those are probably the main ones in college hoops, but there are others. We've done games at the Sandpoint before. I work with Santa Clara here locally in the Bay Area. We played a game. We had them play a game there one year, and we constantly tweak that. And then they're building. My understanding from being down there last week is they're building 1 or 2 others. I'm blanking on exactly where they're going to be, but and there's even more beyond that. So we're going to get to a point where every resort has an arena. The Mandalay Bay has a basically like a giant ballroom, but they use it for the G League showcase during the holidays, and that's on TV for 4 days. So you can pretty much use a lot of those properties to do games if you really needed to.
Excellent. All right, Rocco, thank you. We appreciate it.
You betcha. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Yep, there's Rocco Miller, Bracketeer.com. All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We're going to take a break, come back. Everything you missed in this show coming up next. Stay with us.